Hello everyone. This comes as a response to the episode The Sin of Moral Equivalence of the Making Sense podcast by Sam Harris. Sam, over the years, your work has garnered my deepest admiration. Your work over the years have been so influential in my life and in helping me navigate the world of ideas. Understanding your appreciation for intellectual candor, I venture to highlight what appears to be a blind spot in your perspective. I bring to this conversation my own vantage point as a Palestinian, living the majority of my life in Palestine. My perspective is not filtered through media narratives or secondary accounts, but rather is forged from first-hand experience and familial history. While your recent episode offers some ample intellectual nourishment, it delivers an analysis that seems notably imbalanced. The point you're trying to make, as far as I understand, is the following. At this time, cultures starkly differ in their attitudes towards violence and human life. Some celebrate atrocities, openly delighting in civilian massacres or the torment of hostages. In contrast, others actively avoid harming innocents, holding their own soldiers accountable for such acts if they happen. This divergence marks those who uphold and further civilization's moral progress as morally superior to those who revel in its regression. And later on, you make the claim that intentions matter. I hope my summary does justice to your perspective, a perspective that no one of sound mind would dispute. The issue, however, emerges when you attempt to assign Israel the role of the morally superior, the one with good intentions, while casting Palestinians in the opposing light. This assignment deserves its own scrutiny, as it moves the conversation from abstract ethical ideals to the tangible dynamics of a real-world conflict, complete with its nuances and complexities. When dissecting the labels of moral and immoral in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, one might find themselves tangled in an intricate web of ethical quandaries. To shed light on these dynamics, perhaps a parable rendered in verse might offer some clarity. Two men in strife may be equal in sin. Locked in a struggle, neither could win. A king appears, lends might to one side. He grows in strength, his faults now to hide. Fortified by power, his tone starts to shift. I stand for what's right becomes his moral drift. His rival fights back, yet he's easily smeared. See how barbaric the kingdom all cheered. A newfound virtue adorns the favored man. Oblivious to his past, his earlier ban, the kingdom nods in shallow acclaim. Forgetting his roots, they join in his claim. Two men, one king, in a mutable frame. When scales are skewed, who's truly to blame? Intentions do matter. We can all agree that intentions are veiled, however, within the recesses of our psyche, making themselves known solely through the nuanced semaphore of our actions, both in the past and in the present. You make the claim that if Israel wanted to perpetrate a genocide of the Palestinians, it could do it easily tomorrow, but that isn't what it wants. You mentioned that as something that contributes to the narrative that Israel is a moral actor. However, compliance born out of fear of external consequences does not equate to an intrinsic moral disposition, virtue that's only skin-deep, maintained solely under surveillance or favorable conditions, lacks both roots and authenticity. Therefore, a claim to morality that relies solely on adhering to rules under the gaze of oversight is fundamentally flawed. It's a performance, not a principle. You do know that if Israel were to eradicate Palestinians in any obvious way, their future as a legitimate state is gone. Your discourse appears to be an exercise in selective amnesia, concentrating on Israel's actions within a very specific and convenient window of time. If we look back at Israel's formative years, in an era before social media and the 24/7 news cycle, we'll discover that they were far from being a bastion of ethical conduct and were riddled with genocidal tactics that laid the foundation of the state. A list of the massacres they committed is one Google search away. Those genocidal actions served a critical function, laying the foundation for Israel's present stability and international recognition, a stability that now enables the country to perform theatrical displays of morality and humanitarianism on the global stage, and even weaponize morality. That was all in the past, you might say, so let's also weigh in the current actions. And I will not resort to media narratives. I'll only say what I've seen with my naked eye and experienced firsthand. I grew up in the West Bank, a region you might mistakenly perceive as free from Israeli occupation. My childhood was punctuated by the sudden entrance of tanks into my village while I was playing with friends, followed by soldiers announcing lockdowns via loudspeakers for their operations. As a kid, I've experienced the invasion of my classroom by Israeli soldiers who rummaged through our bags, sowing the seeds of fear. This dread was so palpable that I've literally witnessed some kids wet their pants. I've witnessed my uncle getting shot in his legs as he was building a wall in his backyard because he didn't heed orders to stay inside the house. I wasn't ever able to travel from a city to another without the fear of death or arrest at any Israeli checkpoint. I remember a school trip in which my chemistry teacher, in anticipation of an encounter at an Israeli checkpoint, used to swab his chemistry textbook for English language book, just to minimize the risk of arrest under the suspicion of bomb-making expertise. Take a moment to actually do the cognitive work and imagine growing up in all of that. All of that constitutes an ongoing pattern that exposes deeper, more insidious intentions, bordering on the old genocidal tendencies. Such control not only starves the population, but also starves the narrative of any pretense that Israel is merely a benign actor on the world stage. Let's speak of Palestinians and their actions, the savagery, as one might name it. Let's anchor the discussion in a series of uncontested facts. Life in Palestine under the direct or indirect control of Israel is unbearable. They are humiliated daily, arrested for years without a fair trial. Their borders are controlled, their freedom of speech is taken away, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Palestinians, in their quest for justice, have resorted to peaceful protests countless times, most recently with the Great March of Return. You can Google that. These protests have been met with lethal force, effectively rendering them futile. Every international attempt at providing a fair solution, whether it's a one-state or a two-state solution, have been nullified. These undeniable circumstances collectively induce a sense of being a second-class citizens in what is essentially an open-air prison, The combination of these persisting indignities has led to national, generational trauma among Palestinians. Equating the Palestinian resistance with entities like Al-Qaeda or ISIS is both a logical misstep and a distraction. Equating the Palestinian resistance with entities like Al-Qaeda or ISIS is both a logical misstep and a distraction. This approach commits a guilt by association fallacy and serves as a red herring, diverting focus from the ongoing Palestinian struggle that has been in place since 1948. It unfairly categorizes any Palestinian attempt at freedom or self-defense as acts of terrorism. The resistance is not an isolated phenomenon, Sam. It emerges from the crucible of a deep-seated struggle. When you are humiliated on a daily basis, when your kids are at risk, you will grow bitter. You will find it impossible to empathize, to be a normal human. So to address your depiction that implies Palestinians as people who relish in acts of violence against Israelis, is there credence to this argument? Yes, there is. Are those actions moral? A resounding no. Yet, is it an expected outcome given the status quo? Absolutely, yes. This is not an exercise in justification, but an appeal to look beyond the surface, to comprehend that oppressed communities may act in ways that baffle those insulated from their desperation. Sam, your voice reaches attentive ears across the globe, thereby heightening your obligation to furnish a balanced and well-informed narrative. The intricate dialogue on this subject is rife with unexplored avenues, awaiting voices like yours to illuminate them. As we venture through these complexities, may our shared narrative align with the multifaceted symphony of truth, discordant though it may seem at first. I am acutely aware that the Israeli-Palestinian issue extends far beyond the simplistic dyad of aggressor and a victim, being entangled in a web of geopolitical interests and calculations. While I don't claim to possess a solution, I stand resolute in my belief that a candid acknowledgement of the facts is a crucial step in the right direction. Thank you very much.